The little Apache girl walked slowly along the dusty road, her bare feet leaving tiny prints on the warm earth. She wore a dress that had once been bright, but now it was faded, torn, and patched in many places. The townspeople had given her a nickname she didn't like, but she had learned to ignore it. The $2 broken Apache girl. It wasn't because she was worth only $2, though some whispered that she was. It was because she looked fragile, poor, and alone. But the girl was not weak. Deep inside, she carried courage, even if the world had not yet noticed it. She had lost her parents when she was very small. A sickness had taken them both in a single winter, leaving her to face the harsh world alone. She had wandered from place to place, staying near the edges of town where she could be safe and unseen. People would sometimes throw her coins, but often they would turn away or shake their heads, muttering that she didn't belong. She had learned early that her heritage and appearance made life harder for her, but she did not let it break her spirit. Every morning, she would gather what little food she could, check her small bundle of belongings, and hope for a better day. The townspeople were not kind. Children would run past her on their way to school, laughing at the way her shoes barely held together. Shopkeepers would wave her away when she asked for work, and women would whisper to each other about the strange little girl with dark eyes. Even when she tried to help, the world turned its back on her. One morning, she had found a stray dog with a wounded paw. She had spent hours carefully cleaning the wound and giving it water. When she brought it to the edge of the market to find it some food, people walked past without even glancing. She watched them and sighed, but she didn't give up. She tied the dog close to her side and kept moving forward. Every day was a struggle, but she had learned to survive with small acts of courage. She would pick berries from bushes, gather water from a nearby stream, and find safe corners to rest. Nights were the hardest. Sometimes she slept under the wide sky, staring at the stars and wishing for a family who would care for her. Other times, she would find a quiet barn or empty shed where she could curl up and feel a little warmer. Even in these lonely moments, she never gave up hope. She knew in her heart that one day, someone kind would see her. Not as a broken girl, but as a child with dreams, feelings, and courage. It was one of those early mornings when the cowboy first noticed her. He was a quiet man, middle-aged, living alone on a ranch far from the town. He usually kept to himself, preferring the company of his horses and the wide open fields. But today, as he walked past the edge of the town, he saw her bending over a small bird that had fallen from its nest. Her hands were gentle as she examined its tiny wings, and her dark eyes were full of concern. Most people would have ignored it, but he stopped. Something about the way she cared, even for a creature so small, caught his attention. He walked closer, keeping his voice soft so as not to startle her. "That little one needs some water," he said, pointing to a puddle nearby. She looked up, startled at first, then nodded and carefully dipped her hands into the water, letting it drip near the bird. The cowboy watched quietly, impressed by her patience and care. She didn't seem afraid of him, which was unusual for someone her age who had spent years being rejected. Days passed, and he continued to watch her from a distance. He noticed the way she helped animals, how she collected food from the fields without taking too much, and how she always looked out for the smallest, weakest creatures. But the townspeople were quick to judge her. "Stay away from that girl," they warned him. "She doesn't belong with decent people. She's poor and strange." Yet, he couldn't agree. He saw something in her that no one else seemed to notice, a strength that went beyond the ragged clothes and the empty pockets. One day, he decided to approach her more directly. He carried a small basket of food, bread, some dried meat, and a few fruits. He offered it to her with a gentle smile. "Here," he said. "You shouldn't go hungry." She stared at him for a long moment, unsure if he was kind or if it was another trick. She had learned to expect disappointment, to prepare herself for rejection. Slowly, She reached out and took the basket. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar warmth of kindness. "Thank you," she whispered. She had almost forgotten how it felt to be treated with care, and the words felt strange, but true. The cowboy nodded and didn't say more. Sometimes, words could be too much for a girl who had been abandoned by the world. Sometimes, quiet actions spoke louder. As the days turned into weeks, he returned. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he helped her fix her torn clothes. And sometimes he just walked with her, talking softly about simple things. The weather, the animals, or stories from his ranch. The girl began to trust him, slowly letting her guard down. She told him stories of her parents, of the small joys she remembered from her childhood, and even of the sadness she carried. The cowboy listened patiently, never judging, only offering the comfort of presence. But the world outside remained harsh. Some children threw stones near her path, and adults whispered cruelly behind her back. She would often hide and cry quietly, wishing that one day someone would see her not as a broken girl, but as a human being deserving of love. It was this small hope, fragile yet persistent, that kept her moving forward. Every act of kindness from the cowboy became a thread of light in her otherwise dark world. One chilly evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the cowboy watched her sit by a small fire she had built near the edge of town. She held the little dog close to her chest, and her eyes reflected the flames. He realized that she had survived more than most could imagine. The girl had faced loss, rejection, and loneliness. Yet she remained gentle, strong, and kind-hearted. In that moment, he made a quiet decision. He would take her into his life, give her the family she had never known, and show her that the world could be a place of love, not only fear. When he approached her that evening, she looked up at him with wide eyes. Will you help me?" she asked softly. She wasn't asking for a home outright. She simply wanted a chance to trust again. "I will," he said gently. "I'll help you. You don't have to face the world alone anymore." A small smile appeared on her face, something that hadn't shown in a long time. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of hope, a sense that maybe life could be kinder. The townspeople still whispered, still judged, but their voices no longer mattered. The girl had found someone who saw her as she truly was, not as the world had labeled her. And so, the first chapter of a new life began. The girl still carried the scars of her past, but for the first time, she also carried hope. With the cowboy by her side, she would soon learn that family isn't always born. It can be chosen, given, and earned through trust and love. The dusty roads she had walked alone for so long were now paths she could travel with someone who cared. In the quiet of that evening, under the vast sky, the little Apache girl realized that even the most broken hearts could find a place to belong. The journey ahead would not be easy. But for the first time, she believed in the possibility of love, safety, and a home. The little Apache girl had never imagined a life beyond the dusty streets of her town. But now, walking beside the cowboy along the quiet trail that led to his ranch, she felt something she had never known before. Hope. The sun shone warmly, and the wide-open fields stretched out like a promise of freedom and safety. She held her small bundle close, but her eyes were full of curiosity. Every step toward the ranch was a step away from loneliness and fear. The cowboy noticed her nervous glances. "It's all right," he said gently. "You're safe now. You won't be alone anymore." His voice was steady, full of calm strength, and it made her heart feel lighter. She wanted to believe him, but old habits of mistrust were hard to forget. Still, the quiet sincerity in his eyes gave her courage to keep moving forward. When they arrived at the ranch, the girl's eyes widened. The land was vast and green, with horses grazing peacefully, and a small barn standing strong against the clear sky. The smell of hay, fresh earth, and animals filled the air. It was a new world for her, one that she had only dreamed of in her quietest moments. The cowboy showed her around, introducing her to the horses, the chickens, and a few cows. She listened carefully, asking questions about the animals and learning their names. Every answer the cowboy gave seemed to open a small door of understanding and comfort in her heart. The first night at the ranch was difficult. She was unused to such quiet and calm. In town, she had slept under the stars, with the sounds of the market and harsh voices around her. Here, the air was filled with the soft rustle of leaves and the low hum of animals resting. She tried to sleep but found her mind busy with memories of the past, empty streets, hungry nights, and the cold loneliness of having no one to care for her. The cowboy noticed her restlessness. "You don't have to be afraid," he whispered. "You're home now." His words were simple, but they held more meaning than anything she had heard in years. Slowly, she allowed herself to relax, feeling the safety of a real home for the first time. Days turned into weeks, and life on the ranch became her new normal. There were chores to do: feeding the animals, carrying water from the well, helping with repairs, and learning to ride the horses. The work was hard, and sometimes she fell or made mistakes, but the cowboy was always patient. "It's okay," he would say with a gentle smile. "You're learning. And that's what matters." She began to feel proud of herself, realizing that she could do more than survive. She could thrive. The girl discovered that she had talents she never knew about. She was quick to understand the animals' needs, gentle with the horses, and surprisingly clever at solving problems on the ranch. The cowboy also shared stories about his own past. He told her about his childhood on the ranch, the loneliness he had felt, and the lessons he had learned from the land. Sometimes he spoke of the struggles he faced alone. Other times, he shared small joys, like the beauty of sunrise over the hills, or the quiet moments with his favorite horse. The girl listened intently, feeling a bond growing between them. She realized that this man, who had once been a stranger, was becoming like a father to her, a guide, protector, and friend all in one. Life at the ranch was not always easy, though. There were days when the sun was too hot, storms that raged through the fields, and the constant labor of keeping the farm running. On one particularly hard day, the girl tried to lift a heavy sack of feed and stumbled, spilling its contents across the ground. Frustrated, she began to cry, feeling ashamed for failing. The cowboy knelt beside her, helping to lift the sack. "Don't worry," he said softly. "We all stumble sometimes. What matters is that we keep trying." The girl looked into his eyes and felt a warmth she had never felt before. For the first time, failure did not feel like the end of the world. It was a lesson, not a punishment. The townspeople slowly began to notice the girl's absence from the streets and markets. Whispers followed her new life. Some were curious, some skeptical, and some even critical. But over time, a few people began to see the change in her. She no longer looked frail or frightened. She walked with confidence, spoke with kindness, and carried herself with quiet dignity. The $2 broken Apache girl of the past was still in her heart, but she was becoming a stronger, happier version of herself. The town, children, who once laughed at her, began to respect her. Some even came to the edge of the ranch to learn from her, watching as she tended to the animals or shared her small knowledge of nature. Her story, one of courage and resilience, quietly inspired those around her. The girl herself began to discover something deeper: the meaning of family. She realized that family was not only about blood or past connections. It was about love, trust, and care. The cowboy had given her all of these things, and she responded with gratitude and affection. She helped him with the work, learned from his experience, and shared small joys, like baking bread or riding a horse at sunrise. The bond between them grew stronger each day, and the girl began to smile more freely, laugh more easily, and feel safe in ways she had never known. One crisp morning, the cowboy took her to the top of a small hill overlooking the ranch. "Look at this," he said. The girl gazed out at the rolling fields, the horses grazing peacefully, and the golden sunlight spreading over the land. "This is your home now," he told her. "You are part of it, and I am glad you are here." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of happiness and belonging. She realized that she had finally found a place where she mattered, where she was seen and valued. As the seasons changed, the girl continued to grow in confidence and skill. She learned to ride horses gracefully, care for the animals with dedication, and even plant her own small garden. The cowboy watched proudly as she took on responsibilities, knowing that she had transformed from a scared, lonely child into a brave, capable young girl. Their life together was simple, but rich in meaning. They shared stories by the fire, walked the fields in silence, and laughed at small, everyday joys. For the girl, each day was a new opportunity to learn, grow, and love. Over time, the town began to accept the girl as more than her old nickname. They saw her kindness, her courage, and her hard work. Some came to the ranch, curious about the girl who had once been rejected, and left with respect for her strength and spirit. Her story became a quiet reminder that appearances and circumstances do not define a person. What matters is the heart, courage, and the willingness to try again despite hardships. One evening, the girl sat with the cowboy by the fire, the dog curled at her feet. She looked up at him and said, "I never thought I could be happy again. I didn't know people could care so much." The cowboy smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You deserved it all along," he said. "You just needed someone to see it." In that moment, the girl realized that the past no longer held power over her. She had a family now, a home, and someone who truly cared. The lonely streets and harsh whispers were behind her, replaced by warmth, love, and belonging. Her journey had not been easy, and it would never be completely free of challenges. But she had learned that with patience, trust, and care, life could change in ways she had never imagined. The girl had found not only safety and food, but also respect, dignity, and love. And the cowboy, too, had discovered joy and companionship in the little Apache girl who had once been lost and broken. Together, they had created a family, built not by blood, but by choice, love, and understanding. And so, in the quiet of the ranch, under the vast skies and the soft glow of the setting sun, the girl felt a peace she had never known. She was no longer the $2 broken Apache girl. She was a child of courage, a friend, a learner, and a part of a family that cherished her. Life was still full of hard work and challenges, but now she faced it with love, hope, and a heart that had been healed.